Zach Roloff was born on May 10, 1990, in the state of Oregon, USA, a place where deep green nature seems to embrace every lost soul returning home. Zach came into the world not in an ideal form, unlike so many children born with healthy bodies and open futures. From birth, doctors diagnosed him with achondroplasia, a genetic disorder that affects bone and cartilage development, limits height, causes pain, and presents countless lifelong risks. Yet within that harsh fate, a small flame was kindled. Zach, though little, never let go of hope. A childhood within limits. Growing up on the Roloff family farm, Zach learned early on that the world is not always kind. The teasing, the curious stares of strangers, sometimes even unintentional scorn, all were directed at his small body and a heart growing within pain. But in that place, among winding paths through the pasture, under fragrant apple trees, Zach had a little kingdom where he could be himself. Riding horses, playing soccer, driving tractors with his father, hugging his mother on windy afternoons. His parents, Matt and Amy, were both little people but never small in spirit. They raised Zach not with overprotection, but with the belief that if the world wouldn't open its doors, then one must bravely build their own. They never demanded Zach become anyone else, only that he live true to himself, and trust that a person's worth is not measured in height, but in heart. When the world began to listen, Zach stepped into the public spotlight through the reality show Little People, Big World, where he and his family were filmed in ordinary moments. Dinner, school, love, arguments, and shared hardships. Viewers didn't see Zach as a television character, but as a real person with dreams, fears, love, and wounds that felt deeply human. Zach fell in love with Tori, a woman nearly 2 heads taller than him, yet never distant in his heart. They were married in a sun-drenched ceremony, where Zach trembled and smiled as Tori walked toward him in her white dress. 3 children came into the world, bringing happiness mixed with worry. With each birth, they faced the same question. Will our child have the same condition as Dad? But Zach never let fear rule. He said, if my children are like me, then they'll be just as strong as I am. When darkness crept in, on what seemed like a normal morning, Zach felt lightheaded getting out of bed. The early symptoms were dismissed as exhaustion, but they came faster and harder. Headaches, fatigue, weight loss, insomnia. Though used to enduring pain, Zach finally agreed to go to the hospital, where a battery of tests was run. And then came the unforgiving verdict, the words no one wants to hear: late-stage lymphoma. This cruel illness didn't just threaten his life. It sought to suffocate his spirit. But Zach didn't flinch. Holding Tori in his small arms, he whispered, we've gotten through so much, this too. If I can't win, I'll fight until the end. And so began a journey no one chooses, the battle between life and death. A battle against death and the light within the pain. In his final months, Zach lived as though every moment was his last. He endured chemotherapy, lost his hair, his body became frail. He could no longer lift his children or laugh loudly as before. But in his eyes, something still burned: undying love. He recorded messages for each child, wrote journals for Tori, and always held her hand at night, as if afraid the darkness might carry him away forever. Zach told his son, if one day I'm no longer here, always remember, strength isn't not crying. It's having the courage to keep going even through tears. He recorded a message for his daughter. You can be anyone, even if others say you're not enough, because your dad, who couldn't even reach the sink, loved your mom with all his being and raised you all with his whole heart. A song for a silent hero's farewell. On an autumn morning, as fog still veiled the fields behind the house, Zach closed his eyes for the last time. His breath slowed, light as a breeze. Tori softly sang in his ear, you are my sunshine. The lullaby once sung to their children, now guiding Zach into eternity. His passing left millions in solemn silence. Across the world, people wrote, thank you for living like a warrior. On social media, a photo of Zach sitting in an apple orchard, cradling his children, became a symbol of a beautiful life, not because it was long, but because it was deep. promise from those who remain. At the memorial, people didn't cry with tears, but with memories. Tori spoke of how Zach tried walking again to send his child off to school. His parents remembered the boy who collapsed in pain but still said, "I'm okay." Friends recalled the smile Zach always wore, even on his worst days. And everyone made a silent vow to keep living with the same courage Zach had shown. Zach Roloff, never tall in body, but towering like a mountain in the hearts of millions. He may no longer walk this visible world, but in every letter, every lesson, every unfinished dream, he lives on. And perhaps he never truly left, for those who love him continue walking, carrying in their hearts the light that never fades, facing the end with grace. As his body weakened and pain worsened, Zach knew he had little time left. But rather than fear, he chose to face it with peace. "Not everyone gets the chance to know when they'll leave the world," he told Tori. "I'll use what time I have left to love you as much as I can." That simple sentence brought Tori to tears, for his love was never loud, but enduring like a fire that burned silently through storms. Zach began sorting through the important parts of his life. He asked to be taken outside to the farm every afternoon, even if only in a wheelchair, just to feel the wind in his hair, the sun on his skin, and the sound of his children's laughter on the breeze. Some evenings he sat for hours, watching his children play in the orchard, his eyes glowing with joy, though his lips could no longer form a smile. During this time, Zach wrote extensively. Diary pages were filled with shaky, yet determined handwriting, reflections on life, love, death, and hope in goodness. He wrote a letter for each child, not to say goodbye, but to give them a piece of his heart. To his eldest son, he wrote, "You'll find the world isn't always gentle, but if you treat it with compassion, you'll find true companions. Don't fear being different. Make it the reason you shine." To his little daughter, he wrote, "If you can't change how others look at you, change how you look at yourself. Because I lived my whole life under judgmental eyes and overcame it all with one belief, that I was worthy of love." The father, the husband, the quiet hero. Tori was more than a wife. She was a friend, a nurse, a shield for Zach in his darkest days. There were nights she didn't sleep, simply sitting by his side, wiping sweat from his brow, or holding his hand tightly, as if doing so might keep him here a little longer. "Don't go before I finish telling you how much I love you," she whispered one night, tears falling silently onto Zach's trembling hand. In his final days, Zach could barely eat. His voice was hoarse, his vision faded, yet he still watched every movement of his children. When the youngest took first steps, Zach gestured for Tori to carry him closer, so he could clap, even if only softly, twice. It was the last milestone he would celebrate. The moment of farewell. The day Zach passed was beautiful. The sun rose earlier than usual, and the clouds drifted gently. Tori sat beside him, softly singing their familiar tune, "You Are My Sunshine," the same song Zach had sung to his newborn son. As the final line came, Zach exhaled his last breath. The entire house fell silent. But it wasn't the silence of despair. It was sacred. A soul had returned to its source, leaving behind a legacy unseen, but felt in every heartbeat of those who remain. A memorial beneath the orchard sky. The Roloff family held Zach's memorial right in the apple orchard, the place where he once dreamed of building a treehouse for his kids. There were no grand floral displays, no lofty speeches, just soft guitar music, laughter mingling with tears, and the kind of stories everyone had once heard from Zach. A friend said, "Zach never took a stage with a microphone, but he made the whole world listen with his silence." A fan wrote on social media, "He taught me how to love myself, even when I'm not perfect. And that's the most important lesson I've ever learned." The legacy left behind, and the road ahead. After Zach's passing, Tori founded a fund called Zach's Garden, with the mission of supporting children with rare bone conditions so they could live, learn, and be loved. She said, "If he could do so much with a body that fragile, then we, the healthy, can do even more to carry on the dream he left behind." Clips Zach recorded were turned into a documentary aired on national television. In it, Zach never cried, never dramatized the pain, but simply smiled and said, "If someone asked me if I wished I'd been born tall, I'd say no, because if I weren't this way, I wouldn't have had such a special life."